Welcome everyone back to season 2 of UK Edu Stories, where we feature educators sharing their experiences and stories within the UK and schools. My name is Bukky Yusuf, and I'm here with my co-host Mark Anderson. And this week we'll be looking at how we can actually remain motivated during this academic year, particularly against the backdrop of COVID-19. And we've got two guests with us today, Amy Jeetley and Patrick Ottley-O'Connor. But before we actually go to them, let me just ask, Mark, how are you today? How's your week been?
I'm absolutely brilliant, thank you, Bukky. And actually, not so much how my week's been. How have your last few months been? Because it's been quite some time since we ended season 1 with that Twitter All Stars night. That was a bit of fun, wasn't it?
It really was.
We had a fantastic time there from Action Jackson to Jazan Pau Far to Nina Jackson and Jules. I mean, it was just a fantastic evening. All the singing and celebration and all the rest of it. And I'm just so pumped for the start of season 2, Bukky. And it is one of those things. Viewers, you may be wondering why we're waiting, because a lot of people have been back in term for quite some time now. Mm-hmm. It might feel like about 6 months since you started at the beginning of September, maybe not quite that long, but we took a real clear decision, didn't we, to actually leave it a little while before we started back, just to give everyone that chance to sort of ease themselves in that little bit into the start of the term. Personally, if I saw one person say that schools were starting again, like schools have been shut forever, I think I might have seen it 1,000 times. It really got my goat up a little bit, Bukky. People at the BBC sort of saying those sort of things, like schools have been closed forever when they hadn't actually been closed. But no, my last week has been really, really good. I had a fantastic experience last Friday, actually, which gave me huge joy and real faith that teaching still really is the best job in the world. I had an engagement with Worcester University, which I do every year now. And I work with 360 new trainee teachers, talking with them about what it is to be a teacher, all these different things, and talking a little bit as well about how we could use Twitter for professional learning and the things that we can gain from it. So you're accessing activities and shows like we do. And so it was just brilliant. I mean, one friend of mine, Mark Ryan, who's a UAE-based educator, said that I'd broken Twitter last Friday because there were so many new teachers to Twitter joining in and getting engaged and connecting up with like-minded people. It was great to sort of connect the English PGCE students to Team English and talking about all that sort of stuff and all that sort of sharing. So it was really, really fantastic, that experience. And yeah, it's been a great start to the term for me, helping people with getting things working around remote learning and blended learning and all those sort of things that I do. How about yourself, Bukky? Let's just bring the screen down here for a second so it's not... there you go, a bit bigger for us.
Thank you so much. Yeah, so it's about my 3rd week of being back in school, and to say it's a shock to the system was an understatement. And obviously, it was about the first time in 6 months that we were back collectively in schools, but it was great to see everyone. A little bit nerve-wracking in terms of making sure that we were socially distancing and and getting PPP in place and things like that, but it was great to see our new students, great to see students who've been with us last year as well. So I have enjoyed it, but I did not factor in how tired I would be, so I'm just still getting slowly into the swing of things, and some of the other additional things as well. I'm still doing the coaching. I'm involved with another project that may be looking at another book. So since we've actually last met, I've had my very first feature publishing a book by the Chartered College of Teachers, looking at early career teachers and how they can actually take care of their well-being. So that's great. There's going to be another one later on this year with Women Ed. So lots of little projects in behind the scenes, as well as me being in school on a part-time basis. So yeah, busy, but enjoying it as always.
Oh, that's really great, really, really great to hear, Bukky. And it's always fabulous to work with you. So I'm really pleased with you come back with gusto for season 2.
And new headphones, you can see.
No more Daft Punk references from me. I think I've used up all of my sort of jokes on that one now. I can't bring that one up again. Viewers, as always, we're very, very eager to hear from you, whether you're viewing on YouTube or whether you're viewing through Periscope on my Twitter. and Bukky and I and our guests as well will be very happy to take your comments and your hellos and how are yous and great to be back and all those things. So please just fire those messages through. It's always lovely and reassuring for us as well. We can see that we've got viewers, but it's always great to know that you're there and sort of sending your shout outs through. And we're very happy to share those on screen as well. Jumping back into the focus for the show this evening, as Bukky said, we're looking at how we can keep ourselves motivated this academic year. We've got a bunch of questions sort of lined up ready for our two guests this evening, but two key areas for us to be thinking about really are things around who helps you to remain motivated as an educator. And on that front, Bukky, who helps you remain motivated as an educator? You tweeted this question out last night. How do you go about remaining motivated as a teacher and leader?
My school. So first and foremost, my students in my school. It's great when you know that what you're doing makes an impact and you actually receive positive feedback, even if the lesson hasn't gone well. The fact that you can see the appreciation from students is great. But talking to staff, and us taking time out just to understand each other's context and learn listening in. I had a conversation with my head teacher earlier this week because I said I was actually struggling to get back into the swing of things. Normally at the start of the year, you're just coming out the gate and you've got systems and things in place. Because we've had the lockdown experience, I'm not quite as, in how I would normally be running things. So her actually listening to me keeps me motivated because you feel valued and the suggestions. But Twitter really keeps me motivated. And that's actually how I met Patrick and Amy, actually. We've been connecting on Twitter for quite a long while before we actually met in real life. And it's great just to, connect with like-minded staff, educators, even if people don't agree, but just to have that healthy debate and healthy challenge is great. But Twitter always keeps me motivated for ideas, laughs, as well as advice and guidance. So yeah, it's definitely my go-to and helps to keep me, going from one week to another.
Yeah, no, I definitely go with that. I replied to your tweet and I tagged some people in, and I did two replies with tweets and sort of names of people, but I could have done 50 replies. There are so many great people who share willingly, are there to offer a shoulder sometimes or an ear if you need it, and all those different things. It really is the best staff room in the world, and it's great that you highlighted that in your response, Bukky. Another question we're looking at this evening is what signs should we look out for that show we are demotivated? Have you got any insights on that at all, Bukky?
For me, if I just feel that I cannot be bothered, I'm proactive, solution focused, like to get involved in lots of different things. But when I turn around and say to myself, I can't be bothered, and I really am not interested, then I know that I'm demotivated. And that's usually linked to lack of sleep and or feeling overwhelmed.
Do you think is that a Catherine Tate bothered sort of thing? Do you think, or is it?
I'm not sure. No, I'm not sure, but yeah, if I just feel like I've lost my mojo and I'm not connecting with things as much, then I know that I am feeling demotivated and I need to just think about stepping back and actually reconnecting. I think primarily with people. I collectively call them my nearest and dearest, who don't mind me bending their ears about whatever I'm going through and can actually just help me just reconnect and find ways forward.
Cool. That's really great advice for sharing there, Bukky. And obviously, I'm really pleased that we're working together again. But as you said, the show's focus is to bring in the voices of other educators, but other people other than us, isn't it? Yes, so with that in mind, should we bring on our first guest?
Yes, please.
Yeah, should we do that? Okay, so please give a big UK Edu Stories warm welcome to Mr. Patrick Ottley-O'Connor, who's at Ottley-O'Connor on Twitter. Welcome to the show, Patrick. How are you?
I'm really well, thank you. Nice listening to you two. Are so professional.
Thank you.
And I can't take my eyes off your headphones. We've got lights and everything, which is great. No, I'm doing really well. I've just picked up a new challenge, and it's one of the things that keeps me motivated as well at this stage of my career, and loving that as well at the moment. I'm sure you'll ask me questions about that shortly.
Speaking of your career, Patrick, could you share with people who don't follow you a little bit about yourself, your background, where you're based, all those sorts of things? Is that okay?
Yeah, I started training back in 1983 as a PE teacher. And then so quite a long time since going into the classroom. First of all, on teaching practice, it was a BEd back then, so it was a 4-year course. So started properly in 87. So it's my 34th year of teaching, 17th as a head teacher, and I worked predominantly in areas of sort of challenging contexts, high proportion of pupil premium, etc., and disadvantaged areas. And I did 10 years in my own schools, and then for the last 9-10 years, for the last 7 years or so, I've worked in schools as either an executive head teacher or an interim executive or an interim head teacher in schools that have faced challenging contexts. So the first time I met Amy, who's coming on lately, shortly, it was down at West Walsall. I took over a school that was in special measures, and I met Amy there as one of the members of staff in that school. I've worked in other schools that have been in special measures down in Hereford or in London, and not always categories. It could just be there's been some leadership instability, as there were when I had my first stint in Bolton. And I've just come from 2 really exciting and fulfilling years in Liverpool with a group of, as executive head teacher, with a group of 3 schools in our trust over there, and just now taking up an interim headship for 1 year in Bolton at a school that a long-serving head teacher has left this summer, and with COVID they've not been able to get a replacement yet. So I'm there for the year to help them recruit a new head teacher and actually lift the school and get the school going into this, what is in effect a new school during COVID, or this post-COVID period, or whatever we call this period. So it's really exciting times, and all that change keeps me fresh, and really enjoying that challenge at the moment.
Okay, thank you. Well, I'm going to ask you a next question, actually. So as a head teacher, let me just correct that, interim head teacher, how exactly do you keep yourself motivated during periods of uncertainty?
Well, I suppose I've specialised in periods of uncertainty. That's become my thing. So the schools I've gone into right through my substantive have been schools that have been in challenging circumstances, category, etc., help bring them and improve them to good schools, and then move on in those cases. In the interim terms, you normally go in and a school is either, not the case where I am now, and actually not the previous one I was at either, but quite often the school has been really tightly controlled, and that's created some real lack of motivation for colleagues, and staff have needed to be liberated and freed from that. Or it may be that it's been perhaps a bit too free and need to bring some control back into that again, and then find our way together. So I suppose that's the uncertainty bit, is going and finding the schools I'm in and what makes the place tick. I use Bolton where I am, for example, now. I always focus on the values-based vision, what makes us tick, and I met the staff in our staff briefing a week last Monday for the first time, and we started doing the vision is this is what it says above the door, what does it mean to us, what's our why, and then we agreed how we were going to operate together, and that's really how we've set off going. And finding out where staff are at as well. I use a series of staff perception questionnaires as well. So on day one, I've asked the staff how they feel, and some issues around behaviour, or some issues around workload or well-being, or a variety of things. So putting the plans in place towards the vision, the mission, where we're going, actually listening to what the staff say, listen to what the students say, to make sure we're doing the right things to get us there. And the staff might have a different opinion, but I'm really pleased with the first 2 weeks we've made together, and I've had some very good feedback again from staff, students and parents already, that we've hit the ground running at a time of real uncertainty for people. Actually, part of my role is to help bring that certainty, and that time of disconnect, help bring people, while we're all in bubbles, how can we keep connected? And that's a real and present danger in all our schools at the moment, I feel, for motivation. It's not just motivation, it's if I'm going to use the 5 ways to well-being as one of the frames for the conversation, the connect part of that is where the big challenges, I believe, they are at the moment. And again, I'm putting a variety of things in for that, which I'll happily talk about for motivating colleagues if you'd like me to.
Okay, well, thank you so much, Patrick. I'll hand over to Mark for the next question.
Yeah, no, brilliant. Thank you for that, Patrick. And just listening to what you're saying there as well, I think what might be useful, and maybe for a discussion after the show, actually, just for some show notes. I mean, you're mentioning some things like that, finding out about our why, and some of the sort of question frameworks and things that you're talking about. I think it'd be really useful for some of our viewers who might not be aware of those things, like the Simon Sinek stuff and what have you. This is an off-piste sort of question, but where do you go for your inspiration to help you sort of frame those things around those contexts? Sort of following up on your.
Yeah, it's a good point. I don't go on many courses, but I help facilitate programs and do training with other people and learn through those things. So the Ambitions Institute, or Ambitions School Leadership, who were Future Leaders, Teacher Leaders, I've been involved with them for about 10 years, and delivering and facilitating their program and coaching within those. You pick up a lot of skills and resources and things you do that influence my own mind. I do some for the Star Institute. I deliver on their MPQEL, the Executive Leaders Program. And of course, if I'm putting some new programs together, the research I do for those things. And it's the things I find work for me. So if I was to take you into my office now in school, on the walls, I strip things back and then start building it again. And the slides I use in my staff briefings and messages become the posters on the wall that becomes my classroom. So I can talk about how we do those, and how we build the school together, and how we build our future together. So it's a series of those. I use a format for the first 100 days of headship that Sir David Carter first penned and used, and it was if you like, I did a program back then called the Aspirant Head Teachers Program about 17 years ago, the first cohort, and he was just David then, and just had his one school at the time, and then followed on some of those programs there, and some of the learning as part of those earlier programs, the new head, the executive head, and so on. Those programs I went on myself back then, and I suppose that's just shaped what I do, and I find what I like. So the easiest way for me to talk about the why is to show a very simple clip from Simon Sinek. I know you'll know the one I mean. It's had millions of hits on YouTube. It's very easy. People get into that, they understand it, and actually, when staff understand the why, they're more likely to come along and do and be with us and join us on that mission. So we get everybody pointing in the right direction. And then my job is to be the cheerleader and keep people going in that direction. And then the other side of that, again, I take my inspiration from other places. A guy called Jeff Mawson. I use a quote from Jeff Mawson back from 2004. Most people haven't heard of Jeff Mawson because he was my old primary school teacher. But I use his quote because I went along to see him 17 years ago when I forgot my first headship. I wore my suit thinking I'm a head. I went to go and see my old primary head. He was a head teacher retiring that year. I went to go and see him and to say, look at me, how great am I? And expected him to stroke me. And he says, remember, lad, it's not about you. A great leader's not a hero, they're a hero maker. And for me, that stuck with me as well about what I wanted to be. I like Mr. Mawson, so I listened to what he said. And a big chunk of my work is about lifting others. And actually, I've had a great opportunity. They won't mind me talking about them either. I've got two really great deputies in this new school who already, the programme I put in place for them, I reached out through Women Ed, and I do quite a lot of coaching for leaders through BAME, Women Ed, LGBT Ed, etc. Just because I think we should pay that thing forward and do that. So I was able to just reach out to the network saying, I know I've coached quite a few people. If anyone's got any capacity, who's a good head doing good work in schools at the moment, could anybody volunteer to be a head of coach this year for these two aspirant heads and these two great young deputies? And that night, about 15 people came forwards. They've both got some real top drawer coaching going on now. I'm getting them on the Ange Brown's Nourished program. Yes. I'm getting them on that. We're putting a whole variety of things, getting them involved in other networks and lifting, and they're growing already and doing great jobs, but lifting and liberating people to do their jobs. And my role is across school is to find what turns people on to deliver on that why. And that's really my main how. So they're all motivating tools for others, but you probably tell from me I got a little bit animated then. Calm down.
That's good.
That for me is what turns me on now, particularly at this stage where I am in my career. I mean, I'm into my final 2 years now, really, as a head teacher. I'm going to hang my boots up in 2 years as head. And so I'll do this for a year. Who knows what I'll do next year, because you don't know in this line where it's going to go. And this keeps me as fresh as ever. In fact, more fresh, I think. I feel I'm doing the most good I've done as a teacher in my career at the moment. That might sound egotistical, but it's not meant to. I get a lot from that idea, and I suppose that's Teacher 5 a day again. The fifth one around volunteering, helping others. Get so much by supporting others, and again, get your ideas from what other people say as well. And Twitter's a great resource, as you said earlier on, Bukky, being connected and being with people. While Mel, my wife, is catching up on Coronation Street, I pretend to watch it at night time and just tweet away and connect and post what I've cooked for tea, etc. And what my tortoise has been doing. Just again, that for me again has been and this is tongue in cheek as well. I regard myself as being a supermodel of well-being, and I think as a head teacher, trying to show that you can do other things and you should do other things, and it's not just about. I mean, I work hard. Don't get me wrong, but I also like to play. When I say play hard, I'm not a hard player. I just like to enjoy my time doing the things I enjoy doing.
Yeah.
Too many people, particularly getting term time, just batten down the hatches and get on. Well, for me, as soon as we recognise that's happening, then we do it. And the phrase I use at every school I've gone to for the last 10 years in my own headships, and again, throughout all the interims, I put the same picture up of my family with Mel, the 5 boys, myself, and the quote which says, "Look after yourself first before helping others, so we can make the biggest difference for our children." And that's the idea of putting your own oxygen mask on. And
yeah, that's what I was going to
say. Exactly the same in this school here, in terms of, and I talk about, I've got high expectations, no excuses, no exceptions. Those things that can become really quite macho and toxic. But it's great. We want high expectations for everybody. We want no child left behind. We want to do those, but they can become a big stick to beat people.
Yes.
My antidote to that is high expectations, no excuses, no exceptions for everybody. But that includes ourselves, with our high expectations for ourselves and each other. No excuses, no exceptions around mental health and well-being and our own. So we can't allow colleagues to work themselves to the bone. We can't. When we see that, we must step in with the duty of care to support that. But better still, empower people, engage people, empower people early on, so they see their own issues, own their own issues. We help them solve them, and then actually get around to just get on and do it. In the words of Women Ed, be 10% braver.
Absolutely. And I just have to. Oh, sorry, Mark.
What you're sharing there as well, going back to Simon Sinek again, one of his quotes I've heard from him a number of times as well. Being a leader isn't about being in charge; it's making sure that you look after those that are in your charge, and that's exactly what you're explaining you're doing, and you're role modeling through what you do, and all of that, Patrick, which is just absolutely brilliant to see it. And so, this is the first time we've met sort of face to face, and so I've seen so much great work you've been doing over the years through social media. When you went viral with your, is it a turtle or a tortoise?
Right, you're right. That was weird. I mean, the tweet was basically, it's my pinned tweet, just over 2.1 million views.
Wow.
How bad is that? That's just incredible. Hurricane just went, his name's Hurricane, he went crazy. And he'd just come out of hibernation just as we went into hibernation with lockdown, because he's just about to go to sleep again for the winter. And he comes out and he chases the ball around the garden, and he either thinks it's a male competitor, so he's beating it away, or it's a female he's just trying to persuade to be his friend. So he's doing this, and he hits it and goes, and it just took off. It just took off. Anyway, there you are. So yeah, I'll stop.
No, it's great. It's great. I was going to say, sorry, Mark, for interrupting. That's one of the things that actually drew me to you, Patrick, and the fact that you are really clear about your duty of care as a head teacher and how you empower and support others. I've been receipts of a lot of the like your advice and mentoring that you so generously offer to myself and other leaders and aspirant leaders. So it's really great to see you modeling that. But I want to ask a question. I want to actually just flip this on its head. From your experience as a head teacher, I know you said that you've been doing that for about 17 years. When do you see during the academic year are the challenging times that may actually cause teaching staff to be demotivated? And what can school leaders actually do to try and counteract this?
Well, first of all, I'll tell you 2 times that will come out that I'm really explicit, and I've said exactly the same in Bolton straight away. I did my staff perception questionnaire on day 1. I've told the staff I'm going to do another one. We'll pick the day, but it'll be the worst day early November. So we're going to do a staff perception questionnaire when staff are most fed up. It's dark nights, it's cold, it's miserable. We've spent that first bit of time when everyone says, they always say behaviour's never been as bad.
Right.
It always happens around that time. So I've said, we'll ask you the questions. And what I'd like you to be able to say is, behaviour's bad, but it's better than it's been bad at this time before. So we know we're making progress, because they're the times that are tough. So I put things in place at those times. I'm not going to give away my trade secrets. I've got some surprises for staff. But I'll tell you a few things I am doing. Equally, when we have a floating training day and we ask where those things go or else, people talk about Blue Monday. You know, in January, that one when everyone's spent too much over a Christmas period, maybe they've eaten too much, the New Year's resolutions have gone out the window. So we do that. And last year when I was in North Liverpool Academy, I had a bottle of champagne on Blue Monday in the staff briefing and played a game of heads and tails. No serious messages. Have you played heads and tails before?
No.
Heads and tails. I'm not. I won't stand and do it. But if you think one answer's there, you put heads. If you think it's tails, you touch your bum. I got all the staff to stand up, and I did a series of questions around something. Heads and tails. The last person standing won a bottle. That was just something to lift the mood, do something different. I've felt normally towards the end of the third week that first honeymoon period starts to go. Now staff are very buoyed at the moment at school, and it's really good to see. But what I'm finding, I've picked up some feedback from colleagues there as I've walked around, because I walk around and talk to people anyway, but more so during this time I'm having to, because we're not having the social times together. Still social distance wise, but go and meet people as a head teacher and visit the classrooms and staff in their own areas where they're eating, etc. Because I've got 5 different bubbles within the school now, 5 bubbles of 270 students with teams of staff that are in there. I've got smaller teams of staff. They're not at breaks with the friends as they were before, because we've had to stagger breaks and stagger lunches. So you've almost got 5 schools within the school and people don't cross. And that causes some isolation. So having to put things in place. We've got extra benches. We've set up extra outdoor spaces and some extra indoor spaces for staff to go and eat, and areas where if we're going to cross the bubbles, but they've got big spaces either side of it, so they can at least be near each other, and trying to do some creative things. But just for tomorrow, and this is, I've told people at school I'm on here, so I may have some staff listening, so shh, you can't tell people. But on my way home tonight, I've called into Morrison's and bought 160 crunchies. So that tomorrow morning, everyone will have a little thank Crunchy It's Friday thing in their tray, just as a come on, well done guys, and thank you. So that sort of thing, just little pick-me-ups and just a barometer of them, how the school's going, knowing where they are. That's as we're doing well together and just picking it. But the worst times for me are around there, and then around the January time is bad. Where it gets the exam times, it gets too manic to be bad. And everyone gets into that. There's the first part where it's really difficult, but when everyone's just throwing everything at everything, people are running along with it then, and it's just about looking after individuals at the same time. So the year does have rhythms, but every school has its own rhythms, and that's again where the staff perception questionnaire comes in. So I do the one on day 1, I'll do one mid-November, and I'll do another one around late January, beginning of February, which is the other time when things can be weighing a little bit. And that's where people can say, yes, I can still see where we're going, or that bit's not, we're not delivering on that, etc. And I encourage really honest, open feedback, where that can be quite difficult for me to hear, because I talk to staff again about feedback being a gift. And in the last school I was in, Emily Vernon, who's taken over as the principal, she's wonderful. She in the first year when I was the executive and she'd just become the acting head of the school, I'd said to her about feedback's a gift and whatever the staff do on this perception questionnaire, and she'd been there as deputy for a while. Whatever the staff say, we've got to listen to it, not be defensive, just listen to it. Don't quick to defend. And she used a lovely line which says, Patrick says that feedback's a gift, and thank you for all the gifts you've given me. I'm just finding a few of the presents hard to receive at the moment. And I thought it was lovely. But that was an eye-opening moment for her in her coaching and her development as a leader. And that we do, though. So for me to actually invite criticism and embrace criticism and thank people for that, as hard as that is for me, that's motivating for me, because it means that staff need to know you've listened. They also need to know you've heard.
Yeah.
Like, staff don't want you to just look. They want to know that you see. It's the same percent, really. And it's really about how staff are perceiving things. And everyone perceives things. So I call it a staff perception questionnaire, not a staff questionnaire, because it's their perception. And sometimes you see a different view from support staff to class teaching staff. or class-based support staff to office-based support staff.
Yeah.
And it's understanding and doing those and making sure that there's not only equality in what we do, but real equity in what we do as well. So lifting those things around. I had a good conversation with a young teacher today, LGBT, who just the very fact I spoke as a white, middle-aged, straight, old man about LGBT and Hannah Jetson and LGBT Ed, in fact,
Yes.
and hooked her up through Twitter, and we made do a bit of connection. I passed things, and she was lifted and felt listened to, and let's talk about career development and about talent development and opportunities of what we can do. Now, she won't have favouritism. Everyone will have favouritism. I think I'll find out what everybody's aspiration is and how we can help do those things again. So it's all about, for me, finding people's motivation, finding what turns people on, and so because some people may be in school demotivated, and it's actually helping liberate and unlock those. And again, I've got some. So they're really rewarding for me personally when you see people who move on to great things as a result.
Okay.
No, absolutely. Just jumping off Pete for a second, although obviously linked, Patrick, got some comments from viewers. Al Kingsley, who's a long-time supporter, long-time sufferer of the show, to say he's loving your no excuses approach, great well-being leadership. He followed similar approaches. He himself, Patrick, is the chair of two large mats in and around Peterborough and East Anglia. So I'm sure there's lots of parity between what we're both saying there as well. We've got another guest who's reinforcing what you said as well about the sort of big difference in importance in listening and in hearing. Two very different things there as well. Just as we sort of get to the end of the session with the questions with you, Patrick, and you're clearly someone who's like, definitely full of beans, but everyone does have, going with that sort of Blue Monday thing, but everyone does have blue days. Do you have any? I mean, you've alluded to some already, really, so it might be a bit of a moot question, but do you have any sort of top tips about how you sort of go about motivating yourself when you're feeling a bit wow, Yeah.
Well, I think I've done this for a long time, but it's not until I met Martin Rea and Teach a 5 a Day that I gave myself a framework. And the 5 a Day framework, and hopefully people are familiar, but I'll just patronize, as Mel calls it, for a second and go through those. And that's this idea of we connect, we notice, we learn, we
volunteer,
exercise and volunteer. Well, I if I don't do all 5 a day, I'll do maybe 3 a day, and 365 days a year. And I use Twitter as my homework monitor, and I'll put that out there to say that's what I've done, and if to be able to share. And by doing those things, I know the theory says that those things will help me look after my mental health and well-being. That's what I do. And I suppose when I'm feeling weary, it's which one of those do I need to top up on? And one of the quotes I have is I sometimes struggle to fit work into my life. People struggle to fit life into their work balance. Well, I do it the other way. I book early to avoid disappointment, as it were. Mel's fantastic at booking holidays. We go away a lot. COVID's affected that. We should have been backpacking for the first month and a half, back for results days, and we should have been going off diving to Malta then. Those plans fell through, but we still managed to get 3.5 weeks down in someone's cottage in the south of France. And then the moment Portugal came out of lockdown on results day, within 20 minutes, we got some £40 flights and just went to Portugal for a week. And we did our running, our walk. We go and travel, we do things. So I have those dotted through the year, because we're supposed to be going to Greece at October half term, but I won't be going away during this period of time because of the isolations and so on. But we'll do something else. Probably sleep in the back of my Land Rover in Scotland, or do something to go and do. So I have those things along the way that are ready to do, and I can always cancel those, but by having those in, they're my ready-made pick-me-ups that I can look forward to at the points. So rather than waiting until I fall off the edge of the cliff or get near the edge of the cliff, I can see the edge of the cliff could come every month. So every month is at least one thing in my diary, which is just always a beacon to go towards, and put those things in there. So this is not good modelling to say I don't feel particularly stressed, because we all feel stressed from time to time. But I think I've got really good coping mechanisms. If I recognise it, I recognise it really early. The old adage of a stitch in time saves 9. and I talk about difficult conversations and train staff how to have difficult conversations, so they stop becoming difficult conversations. Because as soon as you do them when you feel a little bit awkward,
yeah,
and they're not difficult. And actually, I do the same with myself, and I'm really in tune with noticing myself. The kids, my own kids, still laugh at me that I'll come home, strip out my suit, and go and lay on the floor to talk to Hurricane for just 5 minutes. Or, you know, I come home, I cook tea every night. I love cooking. I love eating. I'm having to cook healthily, and in fact, from June the 1st, I've lost 1 stone, 10.5 pounds. Thank you. But that, I for those previous 2 years at Liverpool, that was my Achilles heel, because I had a 15-hour commute every day. Every week.
Every day.
and so I used to fill that time with loads of great coaching conversations. People used to book in for when I jumped in the car to go home, and I'd travel home fairly early, and I'd have some great conversations with people and be able to support or listen to podcasts or whatever else. But that really hit my exercise quite hard, and the way it crept on. I've rebooted myself, rebalanced myself. Lockdown helped with a bit of that, and the new role, it's nowhere near as much as commute. So I've built the exercise bit back more sustainable. Being a guy in his mid to late 50s, overweight, COVID and all, it's not the place to be. So I'm just trying to really put my oxygen mask on to avoid putting an oxygen mask on, maybe.
Oh, listen, Patrick. Al King commented and said that he could listen to you all evening. Great insights, and Bukky, I'm sure you agree. We could sit and listen to you sharing all night, Patrick. We'll have to get you back again. Motivation, I think.
Absolutely.
But I'm mindful that Amy has been itching and ready and raring to come on for a little while. So I'm going to move you down the count, Patrick, if that's all right, and bring Amy. Don't disappear. You're still.
I'm waiting.
But I'd love to bring Amy onto the show now. So here she is, and I'll switch things around a little bit.
Hello.
Welcome to the show. Welcome to this week's episode.
Thank you for inviting me.
Cool. Thank you for being so patient.
You're very welcome, Amy.
I'm used to Patrick. That's all right. That's absolutely fine.
So welcoming you to the show, could you introduce yourself to our audience and explain a little bit about your role, the context you work in, some of your sort of history and education?
Yeah, of course. So Amy Jeetley, I'm at Amy Jeetley on Twitter. I've started a new school in lockdown at Easter. So it's a lead practitioner role. It's in Sandwell, which is one of the 16th most deprived boroughs in the UK, I think. And it's got a lot of deprived areas around it. My role involves leading teaching and learning across the whole school. So obviously we're putting strategies in place at the moment because I'm new to the role. Also, I'll be a lead coach as well. And obviously dealing with departmental teaching and learning, including mentoring, NQTs and Teach Firsts. So I'm absolutely loving it. Very tired like you, Bukky, but absolutely loving what I'm doing. So my background is I've been teaching for about 10 years now. Like Patrick mentioned earlier, I've worked at a school, an EAP school with him when he was interim principal. I've moved in about 10 years, probably about 6 schools now. So that's quite a high turnaround. Not because I like job hopping, there were reasons for it. I think I found the fit I was looking for. And prior to that, I've got like a 15-year background in business and recruitment. So that's just my background. A lot of skills are brought over from that into teaching.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you. Thanks. Great introduction. Thank you, Amy. Now, I know that in addition to this, you also are involved with like helping people with growth and energies and things like that. So from your experiences in these particular aspects, what would you say are the key things that will help to keep a person motivated from what you've experienced?
Okay, so motivation. So when I was in business, we looked a lot at extrinsic motivators and intrinsic motivators. And in the current coming into teaching, it was very, very different. I think teachers are so altruistic and are always giving of themselves, always so selfless. Teachers, leaders, anybody who works in education will give of themselves a lot. And there's a lot of intrinsic motivation for teachers. You don't have to tell a teacher, can you get this thing done for students? You don't have to tell a leader, can you support your staff? They're going to do it. There's a lot of intrinsic motivation. But also from what you mentioned, Bukky, from an energy aspect, on a daily, regular basis, we have a lot of influences around us. We can sometimes get demotivated, and we think maybe, have we not got inner desire? Have we not got the drive and passion that I had? But sometimes it could be that the influences around us are affecting us on a subtle energy level. And you've heard me speak about that before anyway. So I think at the moment, for people to not get demotivated, or at least keep up with the motivation, is what you said earlier, is really understand yourself. And Patrick, you do that as well, understanding yourself really well to know what is it bringing me down. Is this me normally? We staff, we absorb. So if you think about a class, and Bukky, think about the school that you work at, there will be so many issues, so much baggage that students have, that you have, teachers have. And at times, if you're quite open-hearted, we come home with it, don't we? Yeah. We come home carrying stuff, energies that aren't actually ours. So the question is, can we recognise what is ours? Can we recognise what isn't? And what strategies can we put in place so that we can remain buoyant all the time and not, like, as Patrick says, fall off the edge of the cliff? So some of the things I do is I've worked a lot on myself to try and understand me and my triggers, and understand when I get tired, what do I need? Mostly 99% of the time it is sleep. Yeah. And if I had my sleep, I will be absolutely fine. And I think it would be lovely to see teachers this academic year building time for self-recognition and self-awareness, because once you've got self-recognition and self-awareness, you then have the capacity to build and find your support network and things that can help. That makes sense?
Yes. I love the answer. And I think about that, the role of sleep is so crucial. It's taken me a long time to recognize that as well. So it's great to hear that that's part of what will actually help us maintain our energies and also remain motivated.
And also with sleep, we think about sleep to rest our physical bodies, but at night in sleep, we process what's happened in the day. So if we as teachers and educators, we're just going on 4 hours of sleep or 5 hours of sleep a night for, like, say, 4 or 5 months a week, then let's not be surprised if we get emotional, overstressed, think we can't cope, because we need that 7 to 8 hours of sleep to process everything that goes on. The other quick way of processing things is if you can start meditating. You meditate for 10 to 15 minutes a day, you take away that processing, so your sleep becomes a bit more relaxful. That makes sense. Okay. It's a relaxing word. I don't even know. Relaxing. Just make that word up.
Relaxing. I think. It's interesting you talk about sleep. I was watching, and this is completely education non-related, but it's definitely an age thing. I was watching Michael McIntyre talking about sleep, and when you get to a certain age, that thing where I have to wake up in the middle of the night just to go for a wee. And these sort of things happen as we get older, and it's happened to me a few times, and now I'm getting to the age that I am, and I don't know if Patrick experienced this himself, but when you get to give it a thumbs up, when you're in your 20s, when you're in your early 30s, often you can feel like you're invincible. I used to be able to sort of manage on. I used to. One of my hobbies in my 20s was DJing, as Bukky knows. But I think nothing of burning the candle at both ends throughout the week and over the weekend, and then carrying on the next week and things, and then just I'd catch up over half term or whatever. But the older you get, the more it really impacts on you. You realise you can't quite do as much as you can do. So it's really, I think it's really poignant that you're mentioning these things about the importance of sleep, because I think for particularly young teachers, and I'd be interested on all of your views on this as well, actually, about how we can sort of get that message across to our younger teachers, how very, very important sleep actually is. Obviously, young people are more able to stay on top of all of those things with the added energy they've got with their youth and everything else as well. But it really does impact on you. You mentioned some of the signs there, Amy, with maybe being a bit more emotional or maybe sort of quick to snap at somebody back and things. Have you got any strategies for how we can sort of share that more sort of widely, either of you?
What to share widely? To sleep more, maybe.
Yeah, why is it so important when you might not realise it because you don't think you actually need that sleep when you're a bit younger?
Of course. I think, to be honest, like Bukky said, even myself, I came across the fact that I need a lot of sleep by accident. It's only when I consistently and persistently did not have enough sleep did I actually realise, hang on, my body needs the sleep, if that makes sense. So I think even if we try and put the message out, I think it's one of those things that people will have to just learn. And sometimes it's the hard way, if that makes sense. You know? But I think there are people who understand the teacher 5 a day, sleep is important. I think when we're training some of the younger generation or the trainees or people who've come out of other industries into teaching, I think when we're doing mentoring and coaching, I think if we highlight that to them, or we see them getting stressed, or we see them thinking they can't cope, I think one of the first questions I would ask is, how much sleep have you had in the last 4 days? You know, if you ask them that, then your answer, you can then build on it, because it's really important, Mark, that we don't allow teachers to fall into the trap thinking, I can't do this anymore, I'm not cut out for it, I can't cope with it. Because in actual fact, if we look underneath it, you probably know of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, that, of the basic needs being fulfilled. Is the heating working in your house? Are you, is your boiler working? Are you sitting in the cold? Have you had enough sleep? Is there a crisis going on? We look at all those, and something that I find in schools, I wrote an article for Growth Spirit magazine, and if you look at our schools, some schools are very quick to say to teachers you're demotivated, or we need to put you on performance capability, things like that. Well, actually, I ask, is it a capability issue or is it a capacity issue? Because we only have so much capacity to cope. And with the energy work and courses that I've done, if you think about, it's a basic science, and in science, physics teaches you energy cannot be created or destroyed. It's transferred from one form to another. So if you think about a teacher coming into school, they've had a crisis in the morning, or say a family crisis. They're coming into work, they've had, because they're not feeling themselves, kids have been on form, the teacher struggled with behaviour management. Come to the end of the day, they've dropped a few balls. What's going to happen? Where all that energy that's pent up, if it's not spoken about, if someone hasn't said, you look a bit stressed, do you want to chat about it? Do you want to talk about it? And even if they burst out crying, that is a release. Otherwise, it's going to come out as tension. It's going to come out as verbal expletives. It's got to go somewhere. It's a simple process. And I think in this current day and age, to stay on top of motivation, because a lot of things, like you said at the start, is what I would have said, but it's really looking out for each other and asking, how are you? You look a bit stressed. Is everything okay? Can I do anything for you? That simple words like that makes a whole world. And they'll say, no, it's okay, I can cope. But they're going to walk away feeling, God, somebody noticed me. Somebody noticed that I wasn't feeling myself. Somebody's there for me. And sometimes that's all you need, to feel that you're not alone.
Brilliant.
Yeah, well said.
Thank you very much. Patrick, you popped your hand up. I think you wanted to jump in and
respond. Well, Amy's going to frown at me now for what I say here, but I'm agreeing what she says if she sees out that I think this idea of sleep. So I for my well-being, I'm doing the runs in the morning with Mel and our next door neighbour, and we run at 5:20. So that's up at 5. We run at 5:20. We do that ready, then into school in a sort of timely way. But at night time, I know by 9 o'clock I've gone floppy. That's me done. I'll have maybe a dead hour and I'll be in bed for 10:30, and then I'm probably about 7.5 hours, or 6.5 to 7.5 hours is mine. So I'm not in the full amount we say we should be. But I think with colleagues, everybody's different as well. And in fact, I use the other phrase, which is one person's well-being dream is another person's well-being nightmare.
Yeah.
You know, some people like going to bed early, some people like going to bed late. It's wherever it goes, it's people. The next two phrases, and I'll stop giving you phrases then, but I use the 3 E's with this, and that's we need to encourage, engage, and empower colleagues to really see their own mental health and well-being and their patterns, their sleep, or whatever it is, for what it is, then own it, as in, so they know it's their problem they've got to solve, rather than just pointing or blaming other people, just as in know it. And then as schools, we should help them solve it. So they solve it themselves, but we help them solve it and find better ways of doing that. And coaching is a great way of doing that. And I've supported quite a few leaders and quite a lot of head teachers, in fact, who've lost their way with their own balance for mental health and well-being, to actually introduce. One head, for example, I worked with, working every day late, her and her husband, they just weren't having any time with this young child they'd got. They managed to introduce date night midweek, where they had someone look after the child and they had a night off together to be able to do something, and they both loved running. They then introduced singles night, not what you might be thinking, but singles night being going for a run on their own while the other one did it. And suddenly they found themselves where they are, and in fact in the area they live, then helped form a local running club, because they managed to find ways to balance and reclaim that pattern of things where they were, when really they carried on doing what they'd always been doing, working as they'd worked. And actually those things can snowball. So I think we've got to encourage colleagues to, as Amy said there, to actually look and own and understand what they're doing themselves, and give them time out to be able to have a reflection. There's no coincidence in the schools I go to, and this could be taken the wrong way, but the costs of counselling, CBT, etc., goes through the roof in my schools. Putting things in place for colleagues to be able to speak or have time out to be able to do those things, massively increase the CPD budgets and reduce others to increase that, not to send people on course necessarily, but to increase the amount of coaching and self-support within schools that we can have, to allow people to find their way to be able to do the job, and allow people to, whatever their oxygen mask is, for them to find their ways forward. And sleep's a really, really important part of that.
It's interesting you talk about sort of putting money and budget into all those things there. Have you ever done any research into whether that actually has an impact on staff being off work? Because often supply is an exceedingly expensive thing to engage yourself in within your budget. But obviously, if you're having these sort of motivational activities where you're supporting people with coaching and all these other sorts of training and support and like you're talking about, that sounds to me like a fantastic school within which to work. And have you seen any sort of differences in things around things like supply costs and things due to staff being off ill?
Yeah, no. I'm only got the short-term projects I've been doing as I've gone, but reduced in North Liverpool, reduced massively the supply costs for sickness by putting actually quite robust systems in place around sickness absence and return to work interviews, which are a process that many people go through. Wellbeing is not a soft option. Wellbeing, you have to make some tough decisions sometimes. So putting in processes where people have quality conversations for people for return to work, not to say, why have you not been in, but to say, hello, it's good to see you back. Are you well enough to be back? Is there anything we need to do to put in place to support you? And actually genuinely invest in those conversations, which can just normally sometimes be, good to see you back, Bukky. Off you go into your classroom, get on with it. As you come back in, that's what can happen. And actually, rather than investing that time and making that time, putting cover in place so those things can occur as well. And that's a variety of things that we need to do. So likewise, support plans, I think that Amy was mentioning about how we do that. Last year in North Liverpool, 46 people on support plans. That's outrageous, isn't it? Well, it's not outrageous. They all ask for them. Coaching, you're doing an MPQ EL or SL. You've got a coach. That's part of your support plan. Support plans we equate to people who are underperforming. It can be people who are performing really well, but they just need a lift to be improved, because we all should keep getting better. Not one of those people who are on a program because they didn't want to be. They were wanting it. And actually, it's changing a culture and creating a culture of mental health and well-being. And that's when you know you get there. And you can do that in each of those schools I've been to. Manage to actually tip that point to create a culture of mental health and well-being where people can see, own, and solve and do something about their own situations with the support of school.
Fantastic. Amy, sorry, I'm thinking your hands up. So, yeah.
That's fine. Yeah. I just wanted to add, so I was looking at a study from Singapore about things that motivate teachers, and there was no surprise that it's that the fact they're achieving with their students are responding. So students motivate teachers in terms of if they're doing well, they're doing better, recognition for the work they do, responsibility, autonomy. So all these, and we've heard that, but there is research that supports that. You take that away and that starts demotivating staff. And the reason why I brought this in was when Patrick came to our school, when I was there, staff were demotivated, a lot of absence, a lot of sickness, a lot of cover. And Patrick literally came in, and it was literally like he'd embraced the whole school, and just listened. And I think probably for the first 2 or 3 weeks, did you have like every hour someone knocking on your door or something? But everyone came to see him, he spoke to them, he listened. And we noticed within about 3 or 4 weeks, suddenly the staff morale started to improve. The motivation, we can do this, we can get out of special measures, actually changed. And I remember having conversations with staff as well. And then when Patrick wasn't going to leave, after, was it about a year and a half, people were quite upset that he was going to leave. But if you think about it, when he came initially, he did the simple humanistic things of listening and caring. And as the first step as a leader, that changed the whole school dynamic. And you know, as I said, cover went down, staff were motivated, and he was in and out all the classrooms, speaking to everybody, just everybody, and all the school spirits were really, really lifted. So and I've worked in schools, hence I've moved so many times, where the external factors can really demotivate you. And, you know, I think a lot of teachers can think, well, if I'm putting so much work and effort in, there is not even appreciation, but there's no value there. I think Patrick did, brought in value. The school that I'm at currently is absolutely brilliant. The leadership there is good. The head teacher is superb at recognising staff and putting staff first with a rationale, just as much as the students. He's actually a clone of you, Patrick. I just thought I'd let you know.
That's a fantastic comment there. I think maybe to sort of wind things up a little bit with. You mentioned a bit of research there a moment ago. And the final question for you, Amy, this evening, if it's okay for me to run with that, Bukky, was to ask if you could recommend a blog or a book or a podcast or a vlog in particular that's had a big impact or made a difference for you to help you remain motivated, Amy?
Yeah, so over the years, I've tried to stay on top of reading and listening to audiobooks and throughout even like my business career, information coming through to myself. However, of recent, there are 2 books that I would highly recommend. So I absolutely loved Simon Sinek's Leaders Eat Last, because it talks about the biology of leadership. It talks about the interplay of hormones, chemicals, endorphins, dopamine, serotonin, oxytocin. I highly recommend reading that, because it's not just for leaders, but you understand yourself. You understand you in the classroom, how you lead the classroom. And it's very simple. And the second book, if I can show you, which, you know, I was talking about energies, is this one by Suzanne, The Energies of Your Life. It tells you, like, if you're unhappy with aspects of your life, wondering how you got that way. And it tells you about, you remember I told you about the subtle invisible energies? You know, you can can be in a classroom, you can then end up absorbing it all and walking away. These things will affect your thoughts, your actions, your feelings, and it's about you really understand what goes on, you really understand the principles of what happens and manage yourself and raise self-awareness. So I'd say those 2 books are really good.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you ever so much for sharing this. Thank you. And apologies. There was a bit of echo on your microphone. So I turned microphones off to try and stop the echo, but I turned your microphone off by mistake for like 2 seconds. So I'm very, very sorry for that.
That's okay.
Listen, just wrapping things up, Bukky, I'm so pleased with our guest this evening. I knew Amy would be fantastic. We've met before and talked before, and I thought Patrick would be, but it's been such a fantastic evening tonight, hasn't it?
Absolutely. A great start to our second series. And also, I think from the comments we've actually seen in Periscope and YouTube, a lot of practical ideas and great suggestions that we can actually implement. So it's great. But as I say, fantastic people anyway. So excited for you to join us this evening, Patrick and Amy.
It's been lovely. I've enjoyed it. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for inviting me.
Thanks. And thanks for accepting, actually, as well, I have to say.
No, brilliant. Thank you so much to all of our various viewers who've taken the time to come in and comment this evening as well. I'm not too sure who everyone's names are, but we've got, I think, the head of department for history who's come on and shared a bunch of things about compartmentalizing things, trying to take sort of time off each week. Here's one bit of feedback they give, not that one, so that's me. Try to take one day off a week and making work, emails, or planning. Taking blocks of time where you're not working or devoting blocks of time to a specific teaching thing. Thank you to Sarah Mullin, deputy head teacher. Just join us, and she will come to your headset as well. So it's not just me saying anything.
Thank you, Sarah.
Lovely comments from Al Kingsley earlier and NK. Thank you to Amy for sharing saying thank you for the great advice here as well. NK came back as well, saying they're really pleased that they joined us this evening as well. Look, every Thursday night, 7 to 8 o'clock. Sometimes we'll run over like tonight, where there's so much great advice being shared. So we're always really happy to try and keep the conversation going as we can. But until our show next week, with a focus next week on
remote teaching and how to switch remote teaching on in a heartbeat.
So we're looking forward to welcoming our guests onto the show next week. I'm looking at, say, as Bukky said, how to put remote learning on in a heartbeat. When this might occur, when a case comes up in your school, you need to switch really quickly. We've got teachers and leaders coming on with their advice about how to best go about approaching those sort of things. Next Thursday from 7 o'clock live on YouTube and on Periscope. But for now, it's goodbye from me and goodbye from everybody else as well. Thank you for a lovely evening.
Thank you for joining us.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.